Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Shabbat Shalom
Shabbat
Shalom.
Shalom.
to our monthly Shabbat gathering. Candles, Kiddush, a little shtickle of Torah, and some schmooze. It's always good for us to be together. I look forward to it every single month. And considering we're all from so many different places, we can create this kind of cyber minion. And I want to say something about a cyber minion. There's an amazing story. There are two schools of thought about this. One school of thought comes from the famous Rabbi Soloveitchik, you may have heard of, who was one of the great legal rabbinical scholars of the 20th century. And there's a seminal story about him. Back in the early 70s, he was driving, he had a driver, and he lived in Boston. And he had a driver that drove him around the community. And right around the time they installed toll booths, automatic toll booths, where you could throw the change in a basket to cross the Mystic River Bridge. And then eventually they did it in the Callahan Tunnel. Any Bostonians will know what I'm talking about. And he was with his driver, and all of a sudden there were these baskets where you could just throw the money in the basket and not have to wait in line to go through a toll booth with a human being. And the driver said, "So Rabbi, what should I do? The toll booth will zoom ahead of everybody with the basket. But if we go through the toll booth, we'll have to wait in line." The rabbi said, "Anytime you have an opportunity to engage with another human being, it's a shanda to pass that up." And he said, "Don't use the toll basket." And Rabbi Soloveitchik would never let his driver use that basket to get through quickly, because he thought it more important that people should be panim el panim, face to face. And it's really interesting because in the I don't want to call it a machloket, a debate, but when COVID-19 happened, it was a big issue in the Orthodox community about whether a cyber minion constituted panim el panim, face to face or not. And as you would expect, 2 Jews, 6 opinions. And so there were many, many what we call answers. She'ela, the question was answered, and answers were given, responsa were given. The whole range of answers, from "you can never have a minion online" to "it's better to have a minion online than no minion at all." So there's the 2 extended ideas, both argued for in Jewish tradition. I happen to subscribe that any way we can be together, and if the thing about Zoom is, it's about as face-to-face as you can get.
No kidding.
Right? So here we are in our Zoom minion community together. And I know we all look forward to it every month. And so we're going to light candles and say Kiddush. And then this week's Torah portion is very special. And then we'll have a little schmooze together.
This is environmentally friendly because we're not driving.
That's for sure. Yeah, we're not driving to shul. We just click. And here we are. And I think this is truly a community when we're together. And we just look forward to those times when we can be together at Temple Aaron. And we'll have a boiler eventually. The Israelites had to wander for 40 years. So we might have to wait an extra 40 days for the boiler, or it might be 80 days. We don't know, but it's okay, right? It's okay. Why? Because we're together. And I think it would be nice tonight, before we light candles, is 2 things. We should all introduce ourselves. And I want to start a new custom for our Friday nights. And that is at the beginning, because at the end of the service, we say Kaddish and the like. Why don't we start the service or this gathering sharing simchas happy things in our family or in our lives that we like to share with this very special kahila, this very special community. And if no one wants to go first, I will.
Sure, go ahead.
So I have a 25-year-old daughter, Sarah. She lives in Washington, D.C. She's had a male friend companion for a couple years. And this past weekend, the two of them came to New Mexico. And her boyfriend, Eric, in the most traditional, old-fashioned, charming way, asked me for her hand in marriage.
Oh,
great.
Mazel Tov. I'm so
And
happy for you.
I have to admit, it made me cry
That's great.
because he's the perfect person for her.
That's great.
Oh, I'm so happy.
So
for her.
sometime next year, there'll be a wedding, I suspect. And
Right.
that's my simcha to share. So
That's it.
I'm Rob Lennick. I'm the most blessed rabbi on the universe by being with Temple Aaron.
Wow,
like
that's
to go there?
wonderful.
Thank you.
Who wants to go?
Anybody who's next?
Yeah, you.
Well,
Well, John and I both had birthdays.
We're
in the
Chuck
last
and
month.
Nancy. We're right now in New Mexico. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Um,
We just had birthdays in the last month and we're both in fairly good health, so we're happy.
Mazel tov,
Wow.
yasher koach.
That is good.
Happy
Beautiful.
birthday
Birthdays, yes,
to you both.
great.
We're Chuck and Nancy. We spend the winters in New Mexico. Otherwise, we residents in Illinois. And yesterday, our son had a 50th birthday.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
That's
Wow.
great.
That's wonderful.
That's great.
Hi, we're Ron and Karen Rubin. Karen's right here. And we will be venturing a trip, should things turn out to be okay, to Israel to see our son and his wife and their 7 children. We were supposed to go in January, in fact, leave the 10th and come back February 2nd, but now we'll try to go in February or maybe March. So that's a simcha if it happens. And also I had COVID at the very end of December, and it lasted 3 days and it was over. And so that's a blessing as well.
Wow.
For sure. Refuah
Trip
Shlema.
COVID.
Oh. Call it a
great.
simcha in waiting.
Great.
I'm Elaine, and I'm so happy to be here with the Temple Aaron family because I love Temple Aaron. I grew up in Southern Colorado, and I always would go by and look at it, and occasionally go on a tour there. And I lived in Las Cruces for about 30 years, and I just relocated to Huerfano, back to Huerfano, and my children are in Santa Fe. So I love
Oh.
Temple Aaron because it's like just really reminds me of everything about the Jewish history of Colorado and New Mexico. And it's really nice to meet you all.
Oh,
Nice to have you.
yeah. Thank you so much for joining. I'm glad we connected in time. That's great.
My name is Dick Seff, and as some of you already know, I grew up in Denver, and I've lived in Los Angeles for about the last 50 years. I have twin grandchildren who are going to have a B'nai Mitzvah in San Francisco this summer. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yasher koach. Mazel tov.
Oh,
Mazel tov.
Beautiful.
it's wonderful. Shelby, do you want to go?
Yeah, I was just going to start talking. So, good. Yeah, so I live in La Veta and moved here a year ago from Denver, and just been trying to find Jewish community since there's nothing formal in La Veta, and I've enjoyed Rabbi Lennick and what you do here. So it's good to be here. And I just have been really basking in appreciation and gratitude for where I live. And after a long time of trying to really get settled, I feel like I've finally done that and just am basking in it. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Ron, Leslie, Donna.
Leslie, Donna, Diane, John,
John.
Sharon,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Hey, Diane.
This is Leslie. I logged on late, so I'm not sure what the question was that we're answering to.
Just introduce yourself, and a simcha is something you're feeling joyous about.
Right.
Okay. I'm joyous that I'm the last Jew in Colorado. I live near the Utah border. So that's what I'm joyous about.
That's funny.
I live on a farm.
Are you anywhere near Cortez?
Near where?
Cortez. That's
Cortez.
western Colorado.
The only thing near me would be Mac, Colorado. It's about 35 minutes from Grand Junction.
So you're the Western Colorado Jewish Welcoming Committee.
Correct. That's correct. When they pass I-70, there's a large Jewish star on the interstate with an arrow pointing to my farm.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Even if it's not real, it's still fantastic.
Yes.
That's good.
That's great. Thank you.
Diane?
Oops, we can't hear you, Diane.
You're muted.
No,
It's not
the
working.
microphone may not be hooked up. That's all right. Okay.
Okay, we're gonna wave. We can't hear you. I'm
Give
sorry.
us a thumbs up. That's all.
Sharon,
Well, it's nice to have you.
Yep. Welcome.
you're muted, Sharon. Everybody's muted coming in.
We haven't heard from Sharon or Donna or Becky or John, but you're all
I think
muted.
it's-
There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. I am Sharon. I live in Raton, and I believe there is another Jew and a half here. There's one other that I know of, and I think someone who is here half-time.
Yeah,
And
Jane.
so-
Jane is there part-time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So if there are any others to discover, maybe I'll discover them. I just want to say I appreciate you all, and I appreciate the ability to knock on wood, kind of horror, stay healthy, which is really what, barring some minor impingements, of course, really what I spend most of my time trying to do. So thank you, and may you all enjoy good health as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Who hasn't gone? Donna, would you like to jump in?
And Becky.
Or Becky? Either
Yeah,
one.
I will. I'm Becky
Okay,
Hack. I am from Congregation Or Shalom in Grand Junction.
Great.
And I was
Oh.
invited by Leslie to come and take a peek and join. And I'm very
Wonderful.
happy to do that. Very, very happy to meet all
Welcome.
of you. Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah.
you so
Thanks for joining.
Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think Diane might have, I don't know if you're.
Is your
coming
sound
through.
on? No, it's still not on.
No, it's
darn
not
it.
coming through, Diane.
Still can't hear. Too bad. But we welcome
Donna?
you with open arms.
Hey, Donna, and hello, everybody. Happy Shabbat. And I'm from Colorado. Been with Trinidad now with you guys, I guess, since 1918. No, I'm sorry. That's it. I'm saying not that far. I just feel like it's been a long time.
You're not
But,
that old, Donna. I know you're
no,
not.
but my family has been there, but since then, I guess, or even before, yeah. Well, actually, yes, even before that, 1650. So, but anyway, it was nice to be around you guys, and so it's been actually 2019 that I've been with you guys.
Mhm.
Great.
Wonderful.
Good to have you, Donna. You wanna jump in?
John,
Oh, John Bell, he was,
You must be taking a break for a second.
well, it's just wonderful that we're all together and to really meet each other. And in such a world of anonymity, it's good to be seen, it's good to be known, and a reminder of how much everyone matters, especially here at Temple Aaron. So let's begin and light the Shabbat candles. If you have your candles, you can get them ready. So first we'll light them together. And I always like to remind everyone we have a minimum of 2 candles because of the 2 commandments regarding Shabbat in the 2 versions of the 10 commandments. The first version in Exodus, which happens to be part of tonight's Torah portion, says, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And then in Deuteronomy, in the second version, 10 commandments, it says, observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So one is for remember and one is for observe. So as we join together, Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahavit shel Shabbat. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And if you have a Kiddush cup, time to hold it up. And we'll say the short bracha for the Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei hagafen. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this week's Torah portion is entitled Yitro or Jethro. The Torah portions, by the way, get their names in Hebrew based on the first or second word read in the portion. And this week it begins with Moses's father-in-law, who is a Midianite priest, but believes in the one God of Yahweh, observing Moses starting to lose his composure, trying to juggle all of his responsibilities as the leader of this mass of people who have left Egypt. And Jethro, the wise one, the sage, sits him down and says, Moshe, you can't do this yourself. You're going to drive yourself into the ground. Now, just as an aside, how many of us have ever heard that in our lives? And so Moses is smart. He doesn't always have control of his emotions, but he's smart. And he knows that Jethro is right. And so we read, and this is an important fact in the evolution of our ancestors, he appoints tribal leaders and judges and organizers, the Torah says, to help him adjudicate the matters being brought to him. And this notion of Moses's authority being transmitted through layers of partnerships actually finds its way to the very opening verses of Pirkei Avot, called The Ethics of Our Ancestors, which is a tractate of the Mishnah, the first collection of Jewish law. And it's the very actually positioned as the very center book of the Mishnah. And that Pirkei Avot, The Ethics of Our Ancestors, begins with, and the Torah was given on Sinai to Moses. And then it says, and then Moses passed it on. And eventually makes its way to the rabbis. And the rabbis then are the custodians to bring it to the Jewish people. And so this notion of transmission is actually right at the very beginning of tonight's Torah portion. The second thing that happens tonight is the people, Bnei Yisrael, the ancestors of Jacob, who's known as Israel, all the people that left Egypt, they are actually camped right now at the base of Mount Sinai. And I can honestly tell you a story. I've been to Mount Sinai in the Sinai Desert. Now, we don't know if it's exactly this particular mountain, but there is a mountain that is identified as Sinai. And the reason we know is that a monastery, a tiny little monastery, was built on the top of this mountain in the Sinai Desert called Santa Catarina. And on the top of the so-called Mount Sinai, you can climb and you can experience Sinai. Now, I'll just tell you, this was like beyond imagination for a teenage person like me, but at the age of 18, on a US-wide pilgrimage, when I was the international president of USY, no less, climbed Mount Sinai in the middle of the night at that location in the Sinai and watched the sunrise and blew the shofar. And I must tell you, the thing you notice about Sinai more than anything else, and the Midrash makes commentary on this, Sinai is not the tallest mountain around that area. It's actually quite smaller than many of the mountains surrounding it, because Sinai was supposed to symbolize humility. And so Moses, in this week's Torah portion, brings the people and they camp at the base of Mount Sinai. And then we're told the third thing in the Torah portion is that God presents God's self to the Israelites at the base of Mount Sinai. It says the Israelites go through 3 days of preparation for this like big meeting, you know, like preparing for an interview. Like they were very anxious, they cleaned, they washed, they got at the base of the mountain, and then the Torah text says, and God's presence was made known to them. And the text says something very important. And each one, the Hebrew being in the singular, each one experienced God's presence in their own way, which is another important lesson at the heart of Judaism, is that when it comes down to it, we pray to one God. Yes, this God has many, many attributes, and we unify in prayer through the traditions of the prayer book and the prayers of our ancestors. But in essence, at the end of the day, we all stand at Sinai as an individual. And we all, I'm getting goosebumps saying this, and we all experience Sinai as an individual. And they say the Jewish people stand at Sinai in every generation. So even in our generation, each of us in our own very private, personal way stands at Sinai. And so we read the first articulation of that in this week's Torah portion. And then after God meets the people in this very mysterious way, we read about Moses climbing the mountain. And it just creates an opportunity where I just cannot resist sharing with you this.
Cecil B. DeMille.
From the burning bush, O Lord, you charged me to bring the people to this holy mountain, to behold your glory and receive your law. What have I left undone?
I can hear a lisp or a stutter.
Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graves. Not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain.
That was high tech back then.
To keep it holy. Thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet anything that is thy neighbor. Written with the finger of God.
They wait because when the movie's over, so they go back to normal.
That was great. I haven't seen that in a while.
I'll tell you why I show that to you. Number one, there's a machloket, an argument in the history of our tradition about whether it's acceptable to try to depict that encounter. Because we can understand the idea that whatever happened with Moses and God was so, if you believe it, beyond comprehension. And so people say, you shouldn't watch something like this. You should only imagine it. It should only exist. Remember, we talked about in our Kabbalah class last time, 2 weeks ago, in your spiritual imagination. It should only exist in your spiritual imagination. But I have to tell you, I love DeMille's depiction of this. Not that I'm sure it's true or anything, but it does suggest the awe of that moment. I will make this commentary about DeMille's depiction. One thing very positive and one thing that's a mistake. At the beginning, the voice of God says, I am. It says it twice. The voice says it twice. And that is the first commandment. It doesn't sound like a commandment. It's not written in the form of a commandment. It's exactly, I am the Lord your God who led you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Anochi Adonai Elohecha hashevoticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. I am the Lord who took you out of Egypt from the land of slavery, etc. And DeMille makes that point very well, although the common observer doesn't know it. But where he makes a mistake is on the commandment, thou shalt not kill. The Hebrew does not say that. Christian Bibles, unfortunately, misrepresent it. It says, thou shalt not murder. And that distinction between killing and murder represents Judaism's contribution to the world, because later in the Torah, we read about the invention of due process, that not all killing is murder. Some killing is in self-defense. Some killing is necessary for sustenance. And some killing is accidental. And some killing is premeditated. And we can thank the civilization of our ancestors for introducing that notion to the world, in fact, when they created later on in Leviticus what were known as cities of refuge, where it says a man killer, not intending to be gender specific, but that's the Hebrew, a person who causes the death of another can go to a city of refuge until it's determined, and they will get like protective custody until it's determined whether it was accidental or premeditated. And that really is a big indication of introducing due process of law into civilization itself. And so DeMille didn't get that one right, but he did get the first one right. And I show it to you because, you know, the 10 Commandments are, you know, regarded around the world as fundamental principles of human conduct, but we shouldn't forget there are 603 others as well, 613 in total. The last thing I want to mention about tonight's Torah portion is very interesting. It ends on somewhat of a very humanistic note. After all this divine encounter, the portion ends with the children of Israel going to Moses at the tent of meeting and basically saying to Moses, you know, going forward, why don't you just represent us with God? This was a little too much for us to take. And they're frightened. They're actually frightened and scared by this, what they experienced at the base of the mountain. Moses then comes down shortly thereafter, of course, after they were so frightened. And this is important. People don't obviously connect this in the Torah portions, but the golden calf, which is next week's Torah portion, part of the reason the golden calf comes about is because of that last little section of this week's Torah portion, where the people of Israel are like, it's not that they're not impressed, it's that they're overwhelmed with it. Last thing I'll say about the Torah portion. A phrase is introduced in this Torah portion when the Israelites are encamped before Moses goes up and gets the 10 Commandments. And they have their individual experiences of God's presence. And then it says, after that happened, they all said in unison the following Hebrew phrase. And it's one of the core phrases in Rabbinic Judaism. Some of you may have heard it. The phrase is Na'aseh v'nishma. Na'aseh v'nishma. It means we will do it and we will hear it. But when we look at the rabbi's interpretation, it better is understood as we will do it and we will understand it. And the rabbis ask, and this is why it becomes a cornerstone of Rabbinic Judaism over the course of 2,000 years, the rabbis ask, why doesn't it say we will understand it and then we will do it? Why is it reversed? Why would you do something before understanding it, right? Common sense. Explain it to me and I'll do it. And it's supposed to teach us that there are things in the Jewish tradition, rituals, experiences that ultimately can only be understood by doing them. You know, you can write a book about Shabbat, but there's nothing like experiencing a Shabbat. And so Judaism in this Torah portion underscores that sometimes the most important lessons in life are not from a book, not from understanding, they are experiential. And it shows how advanced they really were in their thinking. So that's our little shtickle of Torah for tonight. Any comments by anybody? Any thoughts? So much going on in the Torah portion, I couldn't resist.
Interesting.
Don't be shy. Please don't be speechless after what I said. It wasn't that good. Ron, did you want to say something? No?
Rabbi,
Yep.
I thought at the end of this portion, there was the beginning of kvetching because they didn't have water.
Yeah, there's a little transition in there. They start to fetch. And
It's-
so they're frightened, they start fetching, and the next thing we have is the golden calf.
Hmm.
Fear does strange things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share about that?
You said do it first and then think about it, right? Basically, because that was a new contract law. This first you cancel. Then you,
Rabbi, why did, so you're saying this is the 10 Commandments, and then next week, then they were, you said they were awestruck sort of by overwhelmed. Then
Yeah.
why did they so quickly do this golden calf? It seems like they didn't have a lot of faith that they started doing the other. Was that did someone in the 10 Commandments movie, of course, the guy, I can't remember which one it is, that I know what he looks like, convinced them that they shouldn't follow Moses and that.
Well, the Torah doesn't include the character from the movie, but the Torah goes on and says, and Moses tarried. He didn't come down for the mountain for a very long time. And when he was no longer absent, when he was no longer present to, remind them, they began to have doubts. And they had heard previously, not only, they had complaints about lack of water, but even on their way out of Egypt, there were naysayers who were saying, why should we go out into a wilderness? At least as slaves, we get food and water, So you had these people who were doubters from the beginning. And then they have this overwhelming experience that pushes them, in a sense, back with the power of the divine. And then they see fire up on this mountain and whatever has happening up there. And then with Moses's absence, like being afraid of the dark, they got very afraid of the dark. And so they began to act on it. And sadly, Aaron gets sucked into it and he becomes a partner in building, becomes actually primary in building that golden calf, thinking he's doing a favor by quelling the people's fear, when in fact, he's helping them engage in a fundamental act of idolatry. And as I say, fear does strange things to people and people lose sight. But we shouldn't think, the golden calf is illustrated as this prime example, but the Israelites kvetch their whole time, right?
They're Jewish.
God, after the parting of the Red Sea, they kvetched. One miracle after another, again, whether real or metaphorical, one miracle after another, God performs. 10 plagues in Egypt, God performs. They're being now transformed from a loose coalition of, tribes into a corporation that soon becomes a nation. And, people are just skeptical and they're resistant and they whine and they complain. And they did it all the way through the desert, throughout Leviticus, throughout Numbers, until finally, remember, in the book of Numbers, they've complained all of Moses' life. He finally gets fed up and he hits the rock and he doesn't get to go into the land of Israel. There's a reason, and it's repeated, I'm not sure the number of times, but it's numerous times. The Israelites are called in the Torah text, Am Kashay Orif, a stiff-necked people, a stiff-necked people. And I hate to say it, but we still are a stiff-necked people. And some will say it's part of why we've survived, but some others would say we're lucky it hasn't destroyed us ourselves. So, we live in that continuum of a stiff-necked people right to this moment, right to this day.
How long was Moses gone? And did they fear that he wouldn't come back? Did they fear he would
They
die?
fear he died in the mountain. So the Torah uses the phrase 40 days and 40 nights. And I'll never forget my first year of rabbinical school, and I was learning to read the Hebrew Torah text. And you know that phrase, 40 days and 40 nights, where else does that occur first? The flood with Noah, 40 days and 40 nights. And we read a number of other sections in the Torah where that phrase is used. And my wonderful Bible teachers and biblical grammar teachers said, all scholars agree, 40 days and 40 nights, it's an idiom. It means a very long time. It was a very long time, and they became afraid. Good question, Ron. Thank you for that.
This is Leslie. You just reminded me of something. How many days must a woman wait after giving birth until she can have intercourse again? Is it 40 days?
I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that question because I don't observe or follow the laws of the mikvah because I'm not an Orthodox rabbi. I can look that up for you. But if you've heard that, I suspect it might very well be true.
Okay.
Going back to the building of the golden calf, if you personally have an overwhelming experience, one that you have not digested or absorbed as yet, isn't it customary to turn to something concrete for comfort, something for reassurance? And so they went back to dealing with what was part of their history, even though that was no longer who they were supposed to be.
Nancy, that's a wonderful comment. Of course, people go back to what's familiar and to what feels safe. And the thing I have to admit, because this is part of how I was raised as a Jew, and you can look at my belly, it proves it out. The idea of comfort food. And, I grew up in a family where if you were upset, they put food in front of you. That was my grandmother. That was my mother. Oh, you don't feel good? Oh, I have some cholent for you. Oh, you're disappointed about something at school? Oh, I have some brisket for you. And I'm not making light of your comment, Nancy, at all. I'm just illustrating how fundamental that behavior is. And I think endemic in some ways in Jewish civilization and this is you raise a very interesting point. Unlike some other Jewish traditions, non-Jewish traditions, excuse me, who in keeping with Greek Hellenistic thought the body was bad and thought that pleasure was bad and thought that, joy and satisfaction were bad, fleeting things. In Judaism, we never have accepted that. We think that physical pleasure is a gift from God. Our senses, our taste is a gift from God. And it's a natural human inclination to want to respond to pain or fear or uncertainty by trying to comfort ourselves. Now, of course, we also know that can also be the path to addiction. And so Judaism has never believed in unbridled self-satisfaction, but that within limits and constraints, at hard times, we don't need to sit and wallow in our hard times. We can look for comfort. the most important comfort is with each other and through hopefully faith. But then we can also, even think about it, Shabbat at the end of the week is a time of comfort after a hard week. And we drink wine. I think that there's this beautiful balance in Judaism between understanding the realities, the hardships of life, fears, but also recognizing that God gives us the ability to be comforted and that we can play a role in that in healthy ways. The Israelites turned to building a golden calf, pretty dramatic response to their fear. And they were punished because that was looked upon as an excessive response to their fear. After all, they had witnessed with such miracles, after all. But even in the golden calf, remember how the story plays out. The Israelites are given a choice. Even after building the golden calf, Moses says, you've committed a great sin. But those of you who now understand that, who are on the side of God, come here. And people did. And then there were those who were completely absorbed with their pleasures, who couldn't break out of it, who, like, in a sense, have become addicted to the exclusion of any other experience. And those were the people that the earth ends up swallowing up. And that's metaphorically, it's like we can react to the hardships of life. Let's just not let our own comfort swallow us. There's a good drash in that. And thank you for the question. It was really, really important.
Is there anything that is said about anybody that didn't join in, creating the golden calf, or did everybody supposedly do that?
Very good question. The Midrash says there were those who did not join in the golden calf. And it's interesting how that's dealt with in the text. It says all those people, the people who believed in the golden calf and didn't recognize their sin, they were swallowed up by the earth. The people who did recognize that they had committed a great sin, it says, and Moses ground up the golden calf into a fine gold powder and mixed it into a drink and made the people who came over to the right side, made them drink it. But the people who never bought into the golden calf drama, they didn't have to drink that because they had maintained their faith in spite of great pressure to fall away. That's what the Midrash teaches. And also some of it's in the Torah text itself.
Thank you.
And I love it when Chuck nods his head because he knows the Torah very, very well. And when he nods his head, I know, like, yeah, I'm saying the right thing.
That's great.
So we have some time left. Anyone want to schmooze? Anything you want to talk about?
Sure.
Sei gesund.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anybody jump in there?
I see Jane jumped on.
I don't
Hi,
really
Jane.
see, really, there are some differences he's made in terms of
There, now you can hear me?
Christianity.
Yeah, now we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you. How are you?
Hold on, I was having trouble getting on tonight. I don't know what's going on here. There. Can you see me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Neil keeps disappearing. I don't know
I
where
know.
It's the spirit of,
I know.
it's the background.
It
It's
is.
because
and we're
I
gonna get
keep
rid of it.
insisting
Yeah.
I want to see that temple background.
All right.
Oh, we do.
Everybody's seeing it. Now they can see you.
Well, that's a strange background now. There's a clouds.
Hey, Lance.
I'll throw a quick.
Sharon,
Go ahead.
Jane, you know Jane, Sharon?
Sharon Jane is the other Raton resident.
Yes, hi, Jane.
Have you met each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you in Raton, Jane?
No, I'm in Colorado Springs.
Hi, everyone. Shabbat Shalom from Albuquerque.
Hey, John.
Hey, Rob. Good to
Shabbat
see you
Shalom.
again. Hey, Sherry.
How are you?
Good and doing well. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, John.
Yeah, first time joining y'all. And, it's kind of my equipment is a little out tonight, so I couldn't really participate, but I'll be back for the next one too.
Okay, and you know, our next Torah study is on February 5th. It's a Saturday morning at 10.
Oh,
So
cool.
everybody,
Good time.
you know, please join us. They're really, really, really interesting. So
Wonderful.
Yeah, same length also. We use the
You
same
know,
length.
I was just thinking, Rabbi, when you were talking about grinding up the golden calf and making a beverage out of it, that had to be the first homeopathic remedy, right?
You bet. You're absolutely right about that.
Oh my gosh, that's
Or-
awesome.
And like a remedy for the spirit, for a spiritual sickness. Very well said.
Very
That's awesome.
drink. Liquor, a clear German liquor. They had the gold.
Wow.
Well, in the pause, I'll just jump in if anyone's curious. Since we did do a big fundraising campaign for the boiler, we had hoped to have the boiler completed this past November. And with all the supply chain issues and COVID and whatnot, there are actually parts of the boiler that are still not in. And the body and the cabinet, the boiler are at the supply house in Pueblo. But there's some controls and burner pan and some intricate controls that have not been able to make it from the manufacturer. So we're just on standby. We're hoping by first part of February, the parts will be in, and then it'll take a few weeks to, a week to install, a week to test, a week to insulate. And so hopefully sometime in March it'll be complete, but until all the parts are in, we do not have a hard, fast date, unfortunately. So we're at the whim of everything else that's going on with the supply chain issue. But we do plan on having Pesach, so we'll just have to put some logs in the fire. Or
Still cold.
Pray for warmer weather for April.
Sounds like more than 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this is Temple Aaron's 40 days and 40 nights example.
Yeah,
exactly.
Remember, it just means a very long time. So
It would have been appropriate to carry the boiler up to the temple on horseback or what have you, just like
Yes.
the original organ probably got there.
yeah.
It probably would have gotten there faster.
Yeah, quicker too.
Yeah, exactly. So
You have another big project planned?
the roof, we're gonna have to tackle the roof. The windows, we're gonna eventually, the whole exterior of the building will need some work. Not entirely, but a lot of it. The storm windows are just faded and half of them are missing and broken. And, we have that, the original stained glass there, that beautiful stained glass, and we want to protect it. So we want to put, new storm windows up, but that's, a little ways down the line. The roof is probably the next big ask, the next big task. And that'll be very expensive. We don't even today have a final bid. We are in the process of getting what's it called? National landmark.
Yeah. In Florida, we should know in March if we receive that designation.
Was that, has that been finalized yet or still under consideration?
Well, it's under consideration, and then in March, our representatives will be going out to Washington, DC, and it will get presented to the National Park Service. Yeah.
If we do get that, that'll be very significant for the temple. It's a status that not many, there are a lot of buildings in the National Register, but National Landmark through the National Park Service is a pretty exceptional honor. So that'll be a big, we will have a special event just for that. And hopefully there'll be some press, some local, and maybe even some national publicity as a result. And hopefully that'll help, bring some more wind into our sails.
Sounds good.
We will let you all know when we know.
So we normally conclude with Kaddish, and we try to keep us to an hour. So I'm going to bring the Kaddish up on the screen.
Let's say Kaddish for Mom because it's 2 weeks.
Sure.
And I don't
Yes.
know what will happen in 2 weeks.
So for anyone who'd like to share the name of someone you are remembering, if it is a yard site this week or anytime in the near future, please share the names of the people we will be remembering together tonight.
My mother, Sylvia Zimmerman.
My father, Emil Paul. This is not working out.
My father, Leon Rubin, who died during the month of January 7 years ago, 9 years ago.
My mother, Bertie Lennick.
My father-in-law, Matt Stepien.
My father, Jerome Meyer Samuels Jr.
My uncle Irvin Rubin, the last of the 4 Rubin brothers, who just died on Sunday. And he was 99 and going to be 100 in 2 months.
Zichrono livracha.
Yeah.
So let's join together as we say Kaddish prayer. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Yamad, Ra, Chevute, Yamlich, Malchut, Chayechon, Yomechon, Chayedechol, Yisrael, Lagolam, Man Karim,
Amen.
Heish, Rabam, Barach, Leolam, Leomei, Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yihar, Yitamam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Aleh, Talal, Shmei Dekuta, Leila Min Kol, Yachata, Yishbrata, Tushbachata, Benechemata, Da'amiran, Alma, Yimru, Amen. Hey, Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya, Machayim Aleinu, Al Kol Yisrael, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Imamav, Uyasef Shalom. Aleinu, Yal Kol Yisrael, V'yimru, Zichronam Livracha. May all of their memories forever be a blessing. Amen. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
everybody. Stay well.
Bye, everyone.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Stay well.
Great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Up with you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.